It is a sad but wholly unsurprising day in American history and in gaming history, as Nintendo has just won their loss. I know what you're thinking. I know what your next question is going to be. How is this going to affect PAL World moving forward? And the answer is quite simply that it's not, because Nintendo has not won their lawsuit against Pocket Pair. Nintendo has won their lawsuit against Ryan Daly. If you're not aware, I think I mentioned it in a previous video before, but if you're not aware, Ryan Daly had a website. He sold what's called the MIG Flash, the Switch MIG, the MIG Switch. There's a few different ways I've heard it referred to. On the website, it's MIG Flash V2. And what this is essentially a device that allows you to download the games from the game cartridges and download games from like websites for the Switch 2 and for the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, and play them without the SD card, without the cartridge that you would normally have to plug into your Switch in order to play them. I think it should be eminently clear why they didn't like this and why they are suing this and why they may have won this lawsuit. But what the device was marketed as, what they publicly said the device was to be used for, was the ability to download games that you already have onto this one device, and then instead of having to switch out cartridges when you want to switch games, you could just have this one device in there and switch between games really easily. You didn't have to have 1,000 cartridges. This is supposed to be a really easy way to do that. Obviously, what it was also used for was for pirating games. You didn't have to buy the game, you didn't have to have the actual cartridge for the game, because if you downloaded the game itself onto one of these devices, you could play the game without ever buying the game. So it's kind of clear, it should be pretty clear to everyone why this was kind of a shady thing. Well, I don't agree with piracy in general. Like, I have the general idea of if something that's not a necessity costs more than you're willing to pay for it, then don't buy it and let the company suffer. And if everyone just agrees, hey, screw this company, we're not going to pay this unfair price for it, the company will suffer and hopefully change the prices. But I know that's not how it works. That's just kind of my moral belief. I'm not really here to get into that. And this was very clearly, like, no matter what they say on the website, this was very clearly meant to be used as a method to pirate games. Like, the website here, like, I can read the website right here. MIG Flash is the only backup and development device for all Nintendo Switch consoles, regardless of the version, firmware type, regular, light, that does not require any installation or modification of the console. Simply plug and play. MIG Flash card, micro SD card is required and not included. Check out our combo pack that includes a 512 gigabyte micro SD card, MIG Flash. Yeah, so they said, oh, it's a way to back up your devices or back up your games, which is a cool concept. Like, hey, if you could back it all up to this thing, and if you lose the cartridge or if you don't want to find the cartridge or whatever, it's you still have access to the game, a game that notionally you bought. And it's a development device, because then you could use it to help develop things and help develop games and stuff for it and all this different stuff. But it clearly was, despite what they say, it was being used for piracy. But I still don't like this lawsuit. And this lawsuit was not filed in Japanese court. This lawsuit wasn't a situation where the Japanese courts tend to love Nintendo and will side with them no matter what they do, and we're kind of seeing a little bit of counter to that, or maybe not, with the Pocket Pair lawsuit that I've talked about 1,000 times. This was filed in Seattle. This was filed in the United States in Seattle, specifically United States District Court for the Western District of Washington at Seattle. It doesn't matter where it was filed specifically. It matters that it was filed in America, which means it can potentially set precedent for America, and it wasn't won because of the general friendliness of Japanese courts to Nintendo. And this really, like, toes the line of damaging, like, the concept of right to repair. Now, there are a lot of countries that have just universal right to repair laws. The EU tends to have universal right to repair laws, and that's helped win them cases against, like, companies like Apple and stuff like that, where they said, no, you cannot limit what your users can do, what your customers can do with the product. After they bought it, it's theirs to do whatever they want with. And that allowed modding, that allowed jailbreaking, and that also allowed them to take their thing to a repair store that's not Apple approved and repair their iPhone without, voiding warranties and getting in trouble and blah, blah, blah. The United States does not have a federal right to repair law. The United States in and of itself does not have the right to repair. There are six states in the United States that have right to repair: California, Colorado, Maine, Minnesota, New York, and Oregon. Ryan Daly is based out of Michigan, and Nintendo sued them, this has the potential to damage right to repair. And I have such mixed feelings about this, because what Ryan Daly was doing was, whether or not he was openly admitting it, was creating a device that was meant for piracy. It was meant to allow what is effectively theft of a company's product. And I disagree with that. I disagree with piracy on just a moral basis of if it's not something that is a necessity, if it's not something that you're required to have to survive, or if it's not medicine or healthcare or anything related to that, then companies can charge whatever they want for something, and you are not entitled to the product of someone else's work, kind of thing. It's video games aren't a necessity, but also what should happen in those cases is people should agree. And I know logically this is not what's going to happen. I know realistically, pragmatically, this is not what's going to happen. But people should agree, no, you're charging too much for this thing. We're collectively going to boycott it and not buy it, and then you can either lower the prices or go out of business. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. You can't there's always going to be people that are going to say, no, this is BS and they're charging way too much for this, but I really, really want it and buy it anyways. So I realize that's how it's going to work. But it's one of those mixed things. This guy was very clearly, in my mind at least, very clearly making a device that was meant to facilitate piracy. But this lawsuit, and the fact that they won this lawsuit, means there is now a precedent for companies to go after, a more of a precedent at the very least, for companies to go after people that mod their devices, that alter their devices in ways that the company don't want it to, even if they're doing it for perfectly legitimate reasons. Even if they're doing it for reasons that aren't related to piracy, potentially, this might set a framework for those people to be punished anyways. And I don't like that. I believe in right to repair. I believe that once you buy a product, you own it, and you should be allowed to do whatever you want with it, as long as what you're doing with it does not further break the law. If a company, if it breaks terms of service and the company says, hey, you broke our terms of service, so we're not going to honor your warranty because you modded your device, I'm okay with that. But like, say I buy a PlayStation 5 and I rip open its case and I try to replace the hard drive in there, replace something in there that with something else that I think would make it do better, and then it breaks. I made a bunch of stupid decisions that led to that point, and Sony is not responsible for replacing my PlayStation 5. So I'd perfectly agree with like them saying, hey, if you mod your device, if you mod it on its software side or its physical side, whatever, and it breaks the device, we're not going to honor any sort of warranty. We're not responsible for replacing it. I'm fine with that, but I'm not fine with companies being able to say that you are not allowed to mod your device. Like Nintendo right now, if you mod your device at all, they'll brick your Switch. I'm not okay with that. That is, you bought that. You bought that device. That is yours to do with what you want. If it breaks after the fact, that's on you. If I went and started modding my car and replacing the engine or fixing it up to work for nitrous or something like that, and then I destroyed my transmission or something like that, it is not Chevrolet's responsibility to fix my car or fix my truck because I did that. I made a stupid decision, but it is my right to do that. As long as I am not breaking further laws, it's my right to do that, and a corporation shouldn't be able to come after me for that. I'm all for right to repair, but also Ryan Daly was very clearly making a device that was meant to be used for piracy, for illegal purposes, for something that is not allowed. I don't know how to feel about this one. He was doing something that, to me, yes, Nintendo has a right to go after him for, but the results of this could have lasting impacts for gamers down the line and for anyone that wants to mod their devices down the line, because now, and I'm going to go over in a second here, the injunctions and the punishments he received for this. But based on the punishments he's receiving for this can be used to go against anyone potentially in the future, set a precedent for companies to be able to go against anyone that teaches you how to mod your device. So I'm going to go over real quick what the punishments were. And I am looking at the court document right now. The court shall enter judgment as follows. Plaintiff is awarded a monetary... the plaintiff in this case is Nintendo, so instead I'm just going to say Nintendo. And I'm going to say Ryan Daly instead of defendant. Nintendo is hereby awarded a monetary judgment against against Ryan Daly in the amount of $2 million. So Ryan Daly is going to be forced to pay Nintendo $2 million. I don't know how popular these devices were. I don't know if he made over $2 million off of this, if that's what it's based off of, how much money he made, or if this is a pseudo-arbitrary amount of money that Nintendo said, yeah, they caused this amount of damage to us because we lost this much in sales, or blah, blah, blah. Or if this was a case of the judge kind of saying, or I don't know if this was a jury trial or not, but the judge or jury saying, listen, we're giving you this amount of damages because any more would be insane to file against an individual, because Ryan Daly is an individual. I'm not sure. But he is being ordered to pay Nintendo $2 million because, Nintendo really needed that $2 million. But again, like in the concept of like stopping people from doing this in the future, if that's what they're trying to do, yeah, $2 million is an amount of money that's going to stop people from maybe making a decision that Nintendo does. In addition, pursuant to Section 502 and 1203 of the Copyright Act, blah, 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 and this court's inherent equitable powers, the court orders as follows. A permanent injunction hereby is entered against defendant enjoining him and his agents, servants, employees, successors, assigns, and all those acting in privity or under his control. So basically anyone that he hires or is working with him or is somehow his successor in this company or in this endeavor, taking any steps on defendant's own behalf or assisting others in offering to the public, selling, providing, marketing, advertising, promoting, distributing, or otherwise trafficking any devices whose purpose is to circumvent any technological protection measures contained within Nintendo video game consoles or video game software, including but not limited to devices such as mod chips, MIG dumpers, MIG switches, together circumvention devices, and Nintendo video game consoles that have been modified to allow them to play pirated games. Anyone that is associated with him is not allowed to, one, produce devices that allow people to circumvent protection measures, jailbreak their switches, download pirated games, or any way mod their device in that method at all. They're not allowed to assist. They're not allowed to sell any more devices that do that. They're not allowed to tell people how to do that. So this can be potentially applied to people that try to, in the future, this could be cited as precedent. I think in order for it to set precedent, it has to be appealed, and they have to lose the appeal. So it will depend if Ryan Daly tries to appeal this. I gotta imagine he will, because $2 million. But if he loses that appeal, that sets precedent of now people can be gone after for teaching how to mod devices and circumvent certain protections, even if it's not necessarily for piracy, because this doesn't mention piracy in this section. It just mentions circumventing those protection measures, which means if someone else in the future decides to, hey, I'm going to teach you how to mod your device, they can be sued, and they use this as precedent. Taking any steps on defendant's own behalf or assisting others in offering to the public, selling, providing, marketing, advertising, promoting, distributing, or otherwise trafficking in the circumvention services, including but not limited to services wherein defendant modifies or assists others in modifying Nintendo Switch consoles to circumvent NOA's, Nintendo America's technological protection measures, or sells Nintendo Switch consoles that have been modified to get as so modified, any other service, blah, blah, blah. Basically, you cannot sell modified Switches, and you cannot teach people how to sell modified Switches. So the first one was talking about devices that get around these circumvention measures. So things like MIG switches or things that you could plug into your device that will change them in such a way that you can get around protection measures, or that just inherently get around protection measures. And the second one, this one right here, is about modifying switches at all. So if you try to modify your Switch, or if he tries to modify a Switch, or if anyone he's associated with tries to sell a modified Switch or teach people how to sell a modified, or how to create a modified Switch, modify a Switch. I'm saying modify really bad. That is something he can't do, and he will be breaking this injunction. He'll be breaking court order. And again, that sets a precedent for people not being allowed to do that in the future, which means all these websites or YouTube channels or anything else that teaches how to modify a Switch could potentially be punished because of this precedent that's being set. And again, I don't like the precedent that's setting, because yes, well, this guy was doing it for shady purposes. He was trying to teach how to mod devices or sell mod devices for the purpose of, piracy, which is something I disagree with. This is a precedent that is not okay. Obtaining, possessing, accessing, or using any circumvention devices or hack consoles. So he's not allowed to use hack consoles. If he is found to have used a hack console or a circumvention device, even if it's not for the purposes of selling or making a profit, or even for illicit purposes, he is now breaking court orders. So they are restricting his rights in this way to an extent. Assisting in any way with the creation, support, or development of any circumvention devices or hack consoles. So again, anyone he's associated with cannot create circumvention devices or hack consoles. That just seems kind of repetitive, but I'm willing to bet they're just trying to get a lot of words in there to really cover all the bases. Publishing, selling, providing, or distributing any technology, documentation, software, code, or information used to create or assist in the creation of circumvention devices or hack consoles. Again, reiterating the concept of he is not allowed to do anything that will possibly help someone create a circumvention device or hack a console. operating, hosting, assisting, or linking to any website that is designed to provide information to assist others accessing, developing, or obtaining any circumvention devices or hack consoles. He's not allowed to host a website that does these things. Investing or holding any financial interest in any enterprise which defendant knows or has a reason to know is or intends in the future to be engaged in any activities that are prohibited by this judgment. So he cannot invest in someone else creating these sort of devices or hacking consoles. Reverse, and this is one that really bothers me. This is one of the parts that he's being enjoined on that really bothers me. Reverse engineering, decompiling, packet editing, or otherwise manipulating without authorization the Nintendo Switch console, Nintendo games, or any other Nintendo product, or offering or providing assistance to any person or entity engaged in such activities. He is not allowed to reverse engineer, decompile, packet edit. He's not allowed to modify at all anything related to Nintendo. He can't even, for his own personal reasons, try to reverse engineer these things or decompile these things or break these things down. So, like, I have a video where I posted where someone else that I worked with managed to go into the Powland games and decompile it and get some of the data, and that's how we found out some of these weird file name structures and blah, blah, blah. If he did that, he would be breaking this thing. So he can't even, at a certain point, he can't even, like, in certain ways, critique Nintendo's software or stuff like that, because if he has to do any of that sort of crap, he's breaking this enjoinment. He's breaking court order. He get in trouble for that. Directly or indirectly infringing or causing, enabling, facilitating, encouraging, promoting, inducing, or participating in the infringement of any of NOA's copyrights or trademarks or any other intellectual properties, whether now in existence or hereafter created. I don't know why that is necessary, because breaking copyright is already a problem, but I do think what this does is turn it from now, if he tries to break these copyrights, he is now breaking a court order, which means he has inherently committed a crime. Copyright has both a criminal and a civil measure to it, depending on how it is used and depending on the scale of which you do it. So you can be criminally punished. I've talked about that in previous videos. You can be criminally punished for infringing upon copyright. That is a thing, but there's factors that have to be in play to do that. Now he is just kind of, if he does that at all, if he infringes their copyright at all, he will be breaking court order and can be punished criminally potentially. Which means that if he publishes a video where he uses the Nintendo logo and Nintendo tries to go after him saying, hey, that's copyright infringement, even if it is fair use and they decide to do that, he could potentially be facing criminal charges, or at least have to be afraid of getting criminal charges. So it does limit his ability to critique Nintendo. Destroying, transferring, altering, moving, returning, concealing, or in any manner hiding any and all circumvention devices and other devices or hardware used in connection with defendant's sale of circumvention devices, circumvention services. If he tries to move any of these things, and this later on it'll go into why he's not allowed to hide these, but if he attempts to hide any of these devices that he has, he's now breaking court order. Engaging in any other violation of the Digital Millennium Act, the Copyright Act, or the Copyright Act, or any other federal or state law, or as respect in a way, or any other technological protection measures contained within the Nintendo Video Game Consoles or Video Games Act. Breaking copyright law against Nintendo is now something that he could be criminally prosecuted for, because he would be breaking a court order. Affecting assignments or transfers, forming new entities or associations, or using any other device for the purpose of circumventing or otherwise avoiding the prohibitions. So basically, if he tries to form a new company, if he tries to get new associates, if he tries to do anything shady to break these court orders without it technically breaking these court orders, he can also be punished for that. And here gets to the section why he can't hide it. The court further enjoins defendant and all third parties acting in active concert and participation with the defendant, including but not limited to any domain name registers or registries holding or listing any of the defendant's websites, from supporting and facilitating access to any or all domains, URLs, or websites, including any successor websites, chat rooms, and other social media websites or apps through which the defendant traffic and circumvention devices. But long story short, he cannot support or facilitate or help make happen in any way any websites that are engaging in this activity, including the selling of these devices. The court further orders the defendant and his agents, servants, employees, attorneys, and other acting active concert or participating with the defendant, including but not limited to any domain registrars or registries holding or listing any of the defendant's websites, surrender and permanently cease to use the domain name moddedhardware.com, any variant or successor thereof controlled by defendant, or any other website or system that defendant owns or controls directly or indirectly that involve NOA materials, and immediately transfer the domain name modded hardware or any variant or successor thereof controlled by defendant and any other website or system that defendant owns or controls directly or indirectly that involve NOA material to plaintiff's control. So basically, the website moddedhardware.com and any other website that he owns that engages in this activity or is related to this activity is now owned by Nintendo, specifically Nintendo of America. So those websites are now owned by Nintendo. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. In this case, it is, but it also seems like, okay, this could, in future cases, this can be a shady way that Nintendo tries to get control of other people's IP. or other people's products or technology by saying, oh yeah, we're going to sue them for this thing, and we're going to use this as a precedent to say now we own the IP altogether. So now this device that they have a problem with for piracy, they could potentially own the technology for and use it in the future. So it's kind of taking away Ryan Daly's intellectual property in this case. The court further enjoins defendant and all third parties acting in active concert and participation with defendant, include but not limited to any domain right name, registries, hold, blah, blah, all that different stuff, from supporting or facilitating access to any or all domain names, URLs, and websites, including without limitation modernhardware.com, or any success thereof through which the defendant infringes plaintiff's copyrights. Again, it can't facilitate websites that will infringe upon Nintendo's copyright. Anything that he does, any website he hosts that could potentially infringe upon Nintendo copyright would now be contempt of court. The court further orders pursuant to 17 U.S.C. 503 and 1203 upon known away selection, the seizure, impoundment, and or destruction of all circumvention devices and all electronic material or physical devices within defendant's custody, possession, or control, including any hard drives, other electronic storage devices containing such material, or files containing such material hosted by cloud-based or other storage services that violate NOA's rights under the DMCA or infringe copyrights owned or exclusively licensed by NOA. Ryan Daly has to turn over all these devices to Nintendo effectively. So Nintendo can now seize all of these devices and probably reverse engineer them. Now, there is a practical purpose to this that I can understand why they're doing. Nintendo needs to get these devices and reverse engineer them in order to figure out exactly how he got around their protective measures so that they can stop it from happening in the future. But at the same time, like I said earlier, this could potentially be used in the future for Nintendo to try to basically steal ideas and IP from other people that make devices and add it to their own repertoire, which I have a problem with. The permanent injunction constitutes a binding court order, and any violations of the order, blah, will subject him to the full scope of this court's contempt authority, including punitive, coercive, and monetary sanctions. So if he violates any of these things, he can be charged with contempt of court. This court shall maintain continuing jurisdiction over his actions for the purpose of enforcing his final judgment or permanent injunction. Plaintiff is not required to post any bond or security in connection with the stipulated order and permanent injunction. The defendant has permanently and irrevocably and fully waived any right to request a bond or security. So he's waived his right to request a bond or security. Okay. Essentially, Nintendo has won this court case, has set a precedent that now they can go after people that mod hard drives or mod switches, mod software, jailbreak it, or make devices that are designed to modify it, and they can sue them for a whole lot of money. And since this has in there the fact that he can't assist other people with doing this, I fear that this sets a precedent that future companies will be able to go after individuals and legally sanction them and sue them and take money from them if they do anything that supports the jailbreaking or modifying of a device. And that flies in the face of the concept of right to repair and the concept of ownership in general. And I'm not okay with that. I have a big problem with that. And I wonder how this is going to... I wonder how many future court cases we're going to see that are related to the modifying of devices and potentially further limiting rights. I believe in right to repair. I believe in the concept of ownership. And this is a major loss when it comes to that. And I'm not okay with that. But with that, I'm going to do the YouTuber thing. With that, if you made it this far, please leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment. Every bit of engagement helps the video do a little bit better. Share this video if you so choose. And if you want to support the channel in a more direct way, please think about signing up for memberships. Memberships, 100% or 100% of the membership funding is going to go straight to my editor until it reaches such a point that I can afford to hire him on full time. Once that gets to that point, I'm going to try to hire more staff to help build more projects out and work on a lot more projects that I have in mind that I really want to do. And once he gets them on full time, that means we're going to be able to put out a lot more content a lot faster and hopefully higher quality, which means more content for everybody. But with that, I'm going to leave you here. Please check out some of the other stuff over there, both videos and playlists. Bye. Have a nice day. I'm hungry.